This is the abandoned Red Palace in Granada. It was once home to one of Spain's most infamous queens. But how did this palace get its distinctive red color? And what happened to the royal family that lived here? The palace got its name from the 1200s when King Ferdinand III of Castile conquered the city of Granada from the Moors. In his honor, they painted the palace red, but it has nothing to do with the blood of any tyrants. Instead, it was built over an old Muslim palace made from wood, and so they decided to paint the outside walls red to distinguish it from the old palace next door. Then in the 14th century, the Catholic monarchs, Isabella and Ferdinand, moved their court to Granada after they completed the reconquest of Spain and kicked out the Moors from the Iberian Peninsula. They ruled over Spain from here until their deaths in 1516. So it was Queen Isabella who had the Red Palace built as we can see it today. She wanted it to be a symbol of power and wealth, and she certainly achieved that. However, her grandson, Charles I, didn't feel the same way about the Red Palace. He considered it too ostentatious and moved his court back up north to the more modest and classical Palacio Real in Madrid. The royal family never really used the Red Palace, so it was given to Charles I's sister, Joanna of Castile, who had a more colourful personality. She hosted lavish parties in the palace, inviting 8 men of her choosing and giving them noble titles such as Duke of Mazapan. But Joanna wasn't really known for her good judgment. She hosted these extravagant parties while the country was going broke. And she also started construction on a new palace in Madrid, although she never finished it, and it was demolished before it was completed. Joanna spent most of her time in this Red Palace in Granada, and it became known as the Palace of the Mad Queen. She was never really allowed outside of the palace walls because she was deemed unfit to rule due to her erratic behavior. After all, she was the reason why the Spanish Inquisition was started to keep people in check. When she died in 1555, Charles V allowed her servants to leave, but no one else was allowed to enter the palace until 1870, when it was finally opened to the public. But it's not as simple as just walking through the front doors and having a look around. You need to go through a small exhibition about the history of the building, which includes old photographs and some artifacts found inside the palace, including a mummified cat. Then you're led into the palace's main courtyard, surrounded by orange trees and beautiful tiles on the ground. This was the last place where Joanna walked as a free person. From there, you're taken on a tour of the lavish rooms inside the palace, decorated with gold leaf and red velvet. These were used as storage rooms in the 19th century, but before that, they were used as barracks for soldiers. And then there are the infamous 8 men of Medina, who supposedly spent most of their time in the palace smoking weed and having orgies. However, there is little evidence to support this rumor, and it was most likely started by the palace's next-door neighbor, the Duke of Lerma, who wanted to slander the reputation of the 8 men so he could get them kicked out of Granada. Whatever the real story is, there are paintings of the 8 men scattered throughout the palace, along with one very interesting detail. Their hands are always painted slightly darker than the rest of their bodies, probably to symbolize that they lost their hands in battle. But the most fascinating room in the palace is without a doubt the Queen's bedroom. It's quite small, considering that this was the most important room in the entire palace. But it's also very well preserved, containing the only surviving 4-poster bed from the Spanish Renaissance. And according to legend, this is the very spot where Joanna of Castile went mad. But don't take my word for it. Come and see it for yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.